Hi, everybody. My name's Dale Hodgson. I'm the regional technical manager at Rose Pest Solutions. I've been with the company 19 years. This background that you see behind me, I wished it were outside my window, but it's not. But I did take the picture. I do live in the woods, but we are past peak now, so it doesn't look nearly like this. Um, we are at the 2024 Purdue conference. It's November 16th as I record this. So I'm hoping the weather is like it is today, but it may not be. I've been there in shorts. I've been there in a parka. So it doesn't really matter. We'll just dive into this. I want to talk a little bit about drones and pest management, and we shall see how all this goes. And I will be at the conference. So after this, if anybody thinks of it, while you're there, find me with questions. I'll be more than happy to answer them. I'm going to share my screen and let's get into this. But before I do, I am battling a major cold, so please bear with me. My voice will come and go. Okay, I will share this. Let's see if this comes up. All right, take this back. Slideshow. Okay, so far so good. The title of my talk is Inspections, a View from Above for the Purdue Pest Management Conference. And we're going to look at some different types of technology, and we shall dive into this, and hopefully you'll get something out of it. It's been fun for me. So let's just get right into this. Inspections. Every pest management professional knows what an inspection is. That is the cornerstone of our business, and we really can't do anything without a good inspection. One of the first things done to develop a pest program, we've done inspections forever. It's a systematic look at a structure. People do inspections differently. Sometimes they'll start on the inside of a structure and move their way out. Other folks will start on the outside and move their way in. Personally, I start my inspection in the neighborhood and look at the surrounding terrain, buildings, anything that's going on, and then they move to the structure and then inside. Excuse me. And we look for structural deficiency, signs of pest activity, and conducive conditions, things that we all need to know and set up before we start service. Most of the time, we do look at the whole structure, but sometimes we run into situations like this, that we have a single chimney that needs to be looked at, but how do you get to it? That is a problem. Sometimes we'll have a building like this. This was a building I looked at some years ago. It's one of the few octagonal barns that are left in the state of Ohio. So I was fortunate enough to go in to look at that. But you can see that is pretty big. That building is probably a good 40 feet high. So that has to be looked at, and there's ways to do that. And there's some good ways to do that and bad ways to do that, but hopefully we'll look at the good ways. Then we get another building like this. Now, this would be a pretty intense inspection to do. Sometimes the parapets on the building have to be looked at, and that would require either going up on the roof or normally bringing in a lift or a high range or something like that to get a close look at that. So, we've had kind of a gap in our inspections over the years to see, to look at these things. When we run into those situations, what do? We're missing, up to this point, what we're missing is a tool to allow a quick look at a rooftop or a ledge, allow a quick property survey, and conducive conditions sometimes that aren't on the property. We've all run into situations where we need to look at an adjacent property, but we can't get to it for one reason or another. So is there a piece of technology out there available? There is now. That picture is a picture of the drone I use, and it's a nice drone. I'll get into the details about that in a little bit. You can see that has a nice camera on the front of it. So begins our journey. Why do we have a drone program? Drones have been around for a while. Kids had started flying them. In industry has had them for a while. Military, of course, are using drones both for surveillance and actual combat now. But other uses that would affect us would be agriculture, real estate, mapping, construction site surveys. If anybody has seen the TV show Aerial America, a lot of that is drone work. And then we've been using drones in wildlife surveys. Why have a drone program? It's relatively new to the structural pest management industry. We can use a drone to determine insect and wildlife access points from a rooftop, identify structural deficiencies, do site surveys for wildlife. We've actually done these, look for deer, fox, and coyote runs or paths that they take. They're great to do if you're looking for beaver dams. A drone can cover a lot of territory in a pretty short order. I've done this a couple of times. Potential goose remediation, the scare tactic. Usually it's just taking the drone and flying it at the geese, which is both helpful and it's a lot of fun. And we can use these for mosquito work too, to help identify breeding sites. Why have a drone? Potential time savings. We can cover a lot of ground in a pretty short order. Inspections can be done in real time. And the nice thing about a drone is you can video the inspection, the entire inspection, edit out what you don't want, or leave the entire video intact. And you can actually take that video and show a client, go over it with them, and show them exactly what's going on in real time. Safety factors. Everybody probably knows somebody that has fallen off a roof or had fallen off a ladder, or a ladder collapsed or something of that nature. Unfortunately, I had a friend a few years ago was on his daughter's roof just looking around. And he was a roofer, been a roofer for 30 plus years, fell 5 feet and passed away. So anytime we could do something to eliminate the climbing and increase the safety factor, I am all for. So in one fall prevention, those of you that have had to deal with this, with employees getting injured and that kind of thing, one fall prevention pretty much covers the entire cost of owning a drone. Potential use expansion, we're seeing more and more of this. This picture that you see is actually an infrared camera. It's looking at a structure, and you can see by the colors different heat signatures. The red is hotter, the blue is cooler. And this is looking down at a roof. You can see where heat sinks are, and around the building where heat sources can be. And that would help a great deal in our surveys as well. Improvements in the drone vehicles themselves, the cameras. When we first started using drones, the cameras weren't all that great, but now they are exceptional. They have a lot of HD capability. They can zoom. We can do extended videography and infrared photos and video reels, like the slide we just looked at. It has heat signatures, which could be a potential new service for us. Improvements in the drone vehicles too, the flyability. Some of the cheaper drones, or the toys that are out there, are easy to crash. The newer drones that we have now have anti-collision software on them, a return home capability. That means literally you press a button and they'll come back to you. And they have extended fly times. Drones used to last 5 or 10 minutes. Excuse me again, I have to get some more water. This is terrible. The extended fly time, my drone, I can get about 25 minutes out of it. And there are new power packs that I just learned about, from the batteries that I can extend it to over half an hour. And there are drones out there that will fly longer than that. So that gives us a lot of capability. What's involved with having a drone? Vehicle selection. The most recognized and the largest manufacturer of drones around is DJI. DJI is a Chinese company. They have a lot of software and they make everything there. Some U.S. government buildings forbids drones with Chinese software to be used on government property. There was an issue a few years ago about potential of the software being hacked and some proprietary information about structure and that sort of thing being out there. But excuse me again. But drones are now available that are compliant, made in the United States, including software packages. The particular drone that I have does have that capability. The entire drone was made in the U.S., California, and the software is all U.S. based, and it is compliant to fly on government property. Now, you just can't. A lot of people think that when we first started this, a lot of folks thought we could just get out there and get a toy drone, fly it around, and take pictures. That is not the case. Commercial use, meaning anytime we use our drones for business, which is what we do, you have to have a FAA Part 107 UAS license, which is basically a ground test class with a test that you take, and you have to pass that. Knowledge of commercial airspace class, NOTAMs, which is notice to all airmen, general pilot knowledge. This has to be renewed every 2 years. Knowledge and usage of before you fly, and air map apps. Those are apps that you literally put on your phone. Key them in of where you're standing. It will tell you if it's safe to fly in that area or not, which has been a godsend. Drones have to be registered. They have to be, you can go to a site called FAA Drone Zone. You register your drone and it has to be renewed every 3 years. That's very important. These are, this is actually the class. This is not a plug for the particular company, but this is the company that I did my ground training with. You go through and you get this nice book. You go through that. It's all a web-based program, and they will prepare you for the exam that you have to take. After that, I went to a local airport, believe it or not, and they have the exams at most of the airports now where you schedule that, take it, and before you leave, you know whether you've passed the exam or not, which is nice. What's involved in these tests? The tests cover air safety, vehicle safety, weather, prep, reporting, and this nightmare. What this is an airspace map. And if my cursor comes through here, I hope it does. This basically is my house right here. And the airport closest to me is about a mile away. There's one here, another airport right here. You will be taught how to learn what all these circles are, all these numbers mean, and it's all important because you have to know the class airspace that you're flying in. I won't bore folks with getting into all that now, but that will all be covered in your class. And I would highly suggest that people, if they want to get their license, to definitely take a class. It doesn't matter from where. There are a lot of reputable companies out there that will do that. And afterwards, this is what you get. This is my drone license. Basically, I carry that with me all the time. I have to renew it every 2 years. And this is my drone registration. You can see that I have to renew my registration June 1st of 2024. And the registration number 2 is actually, I made that label and put that on my drone. When you fly commercially, you have to have that registration number on the drone. This is what's involved. It's just a top shot of my drone with my registration number on it. Apps, we talked about those briefly. These are AirMap and Before You Fly. Those are the two main apps that are out there. You can get those for iPad, iPhones, and Androids. So you can go to your app store, whichever system you use, download them, they're a free download. Wanted to go over basic laws and regs for flying a drone because things have changed even within the last year. You have to register your drone or unmanned aerial vehicle. That's what that UAV stands for. Oh, by the way, UAS is unmanned air system. The FAA Drone Zone website is where you can do all of this. Our drones must weigh less than 55 pounds, including anything it might carry at takeoff. And we have to fly these in Class G airspace unless you have a permit to fly in controlled airspace. You can't do that, but that's going through another system, going through another website. You have to pre-register, get a permit. That's all online now. That was the reason that I showed that airspace map, because you can identify the types of airspace that you'll be in. Fortunately, now with the before you fly, that will tell you what airspace you're in and whether you can fly or not. And when you do fly a drone, you must keep your drone within a visual line of sight, meaning that you need to see the thing when it's flying. There are instances sometimes when they can briefly be out of sight if you're flying around something. But then those laws are changing because of the intelligence, the AI that's in the drone. But most of the time, you have to keep these in your line of sight. You have to keep your drone at or below 400 feet. That's your maximum altitude. Now, something interesting about that is if you're surveying a building and you're looking at the roof or you're looking at a building, that 400 feet starts at the top of the building and 400 feet above that. It's not at ground level. So if you're looking at, some people do radio towers and look at structures. If you're looking at the church steeple, it's 400 feet above the church steeple. You're allowed to be that high. And you have to keep these under 100 miles an hour. Some of these drones do that. Most of the drones commercially that we use for surveys don't go nearly that fast, but I'm sure folks are familiar with people actually have racing drones and they are exceptionally fast, but those are on a closed track or closed airspace, but we don't use those. You have to yield to the right of way of manned aircraft. So if you happen to see a plane, you need to stay out of its way or make sure that you are not going to interfere with that aircraft at all. Most of the time when we're doing buildings or properties, we are low enough that we're not going to bother with the aircraft. You can't fly these things from a moving vehicle unless in a sparsely populated area. That's more for people that make movies and that kind of thing. They do fly drones for moving vehicles and boats and that sort of thing, but they have special permission to do that. This started in 2023, and this is going on from there. The FAA regulations now state that drones must be equipped with a remote ID. Remote ID is very similar to a flight transponder, like the black boxes that airlines carry and planes carry. It identifies the drone and their location. Most drones now, made, I think, after August 1st of 2023, have transponders on them. I was fortunate enough to be able to download transponder software into my drone, so I didn't have to worry about that. So if you have a drone that was made before August, check with the manufacturer and make sure that you can get transponder software, or there are devices that literally clamp onto the drone that will serve the same purpose. Night flights, people ask about night flights all the time, especially if you're doing infrared work and you see rescue operations and that kind of thing. Some of those flights are permitted under some circumstances, but you should consult the FAA drone zone, and that will be real specific about what those restrictions are. I am so sorry about this cold. Yeah, let's go from there. Doing the job for what we do. Property owner permission, which is really important. You need to let them know that you're flying a drone. Now, most people are okay with that. Some people aren't. If they're not okay with it, then obviously you can't fly your drone. I get questions all the time about neighbors. If they don't want you to fly your drone, as long as you're on the property of the contractor, the person that you're flying the drone for, you can fly that drone there. The neighbors do not control that airspace. They control their own airspace. Again, before you fly, FAA verification of flyable airspace with the apps. And a thing too is apply for a LANC, which is low altitude authorization and notification capability if needed. That's all through FAA as well. You can apply for that online. That just means if you're in a little different airspace, or sometimes when before you fly says it's restricted and you need a LANC, you can go in and get that permit. And it used to take days and sometimes a week or two to get those. Now they're almost instantaneous. You can get those, keep them in your phone, and you can fly the job. Another thing to look out for is weather conditions. You really shouldn't fly the drone when it's raining. It doesn't allow for very good pictures. Exceptionally windy conditions that makes a drone a bit harder to fly. I know my own drone is very stable until the wind hits about 25 miles an hour. After that, it starts to get a little shaky. But I do have anti-collision software in my drone, so it helps a great deal. Another thing is, before you do the job, it would be a good idea to create a binder and record some of this information in there for every job, like the date, the time, basically what the weather conditions are. And you don't need to be a meteorologist. That's like sunny, 65 degrees, winds out of the south at 10 miles an hour, that kind of thing. Another thing too is the drone itself should be checked before you fly it. That's called a pre-flight check, just like we do on our vehicles before we drive them. Just like we do on our vehicles before we drive them, we do a check, make sure everything is right. You do the same thing with a drone, and always put a fresh power pack in your drone before the flight. You can, the way these battery packs are made now, you can fly the drone. You can partially drain them, put them back in the charger, and charge them back to full. These batteries won't develop memory, meaning they won't short charge or get worse as they get older. These batteries are very good at that. Waivers needed. We just talked about that. If you need, if you're flying maybe in the evening, you have to get a waiver for that. And two, if you are flying in the evening, there are lights that you have to put on the drone, and they're very specific. These are small lights, they're strobes. Some drones will take them, some won't, but those lights are visible for about 3 miles. So that's something that's a safety consideration. We talked about the pre-flight inspection of the vehicle. It's always good to do a pre-flight survey of the area to be flown. If you're flying around a structure, look for obstacles, power lines, trees, roof overhangs, that kind of thing. And even look at the ground, because a lot of times when people are flying a drone, they look up, not down. And I've watched people fly their drones, and I've actually stopped somebody from stepping in a hole or almost tripping and falling, which is not good. It doesn't look very professional. So do that sort of thing before you fly. After doing your job, you review the flight videos. You can look at those. Post-inspection of the drone vehicle, I always take a look to make sure everything is okay. And meet with the client and review, outline work to be done. That's basically how you do this. One thing I didn't mention too, and I was remiss, you have to have insurance on these things. And it's liability, because if you, FAA regulations are, if you have an accident, it needs to be, if it's in excess of $500 of damage, that has to be reported. And the $500 could be the cost of your drone, or if, God forbid, if you fly it, it would crash into a building for some reason, or into a vehicle, something like that. That all has to be reported. But you do have to have insurance for that. And there are a lot of insurances out there too. So check into that, but make sure you're covered before you fly. So this has actually been a shorter talk, but thank God, because my voice is just about gone. I want to show some pictures of just some pictures that we took, and all these pictures were taken with this drone. So this is the real deal. But this is just the rooftop of our corporate office. Pretty plain, nothing going on there. This was done in the wintertime. And the drones do fly pretty well in the winter. The temperature can, unless the temperatures get very cold, down maybe under 20 degrees, that would shorten the flight time a little bit. But most of the drones that we have now on the controllers tell you exactly how much flight time you have. So you can be safe about that. A couple more pictures. We were actually this is just when we first bought this drone, and it was flying around with it just to test it, to see how it was. Those are some pretty good pictures. These are some pictures I took actually of a bat inspection that I was doing. These were taken just last year. I got pretty good with this drone. This is flying very close to a building, to a roof overhang. And I got the picture to the point where you could literally, if you see him, you can see the bat hanging right there. So that was kind of cool to do. There's another picture, again, taken with a drone. You can fly him up and you can see how close this is to the side of a building. This was basically a wooden structure on the outside, but I could get within a couple of feet of this. The drone sat there very nicely. And with the gimbals that are on the camera, the gimbals are, when the drone is flying, it holds the camera very steady. You can see the resolution of these pictures, which is very nice. I've got a couple of videos here too I want to show, just to give you an idea of what's going on. This is actually of my house. And I was just flying. If you know, I'll pause this from time to time. Right here, no ladder. I didn't have to go up on the roof or anything. I looked at my chimney, and you can see it's been capped. All that is all good, but the shingles here and around the bottom are heaved a little bit, so that had to be fixed. So I went up and fixed them, but I didn't have to climb up to look first. I just used the drone. And this is just, but you can see how steady this is. And that should, there's not much to this one. I just wanted to look at the chimney real quick. But this, I was just basically standing in my backyard when I did this one. Okay, we'll stop that there. See if we can get to the next one. Again, this is at my house, my backyard. Whoops. Pardon me. Okay, do it this way. This, I was looking at this tree. I wanted to see how close I could get to the tree without crashing my drone. I could get within 2 or 3 feet of it. It was okay. If you can see this hole right here, I had squirrels living in there, and I was trying to get pictures of them coming in and out, but they were a little scared of the drone, so I couldn't get that. But I do know where they're living now. They're not bothering me, so I leave them alone. But excuse me, if I need to, I can trap them. So, okay, we'll pause this one. This is at my church. Again, these aren't very high, but I wanted to just show some resolution of these. The last video I have is really going to be good. But again, looking at the chimney, you can see the issues that are going on with that. No climbing, although this is a fairly flat roof. It'd be easy to climb, not very high, but why climb when you don't have to? But you're getting some idea of what we can do with these things. Okay, we'll exit out of that. This I took on purpose just to show the resolution of these cameras. If you watch as this plays, again, this is at my church. The church has since been renovated, but I wanted to catch this before all the work was done. If you look very closely, right about here, this little square, if you can see that. Did you see that flying around just now? There's a yellow jacket's nest in there, a big one. And you can see with the resolution of the camera, you can see exactly where they're going in and out. Now you can see them from the ground on this because this isn't very high, but think of the capability looking at a higher building and you want to see where yellow jackets are. Very easy to do. No climbing, nothing like that. You can see where they're going in and out. You can find out what's going on with them. And really, these yellow jackets do not like that drone. But they can, you can literally see where they're going in and out. I treated that, came back 2 days later, flew the drone there again, didn't have any movement, I was done. This is just another out property. I wanted to see, again, with the resolution of the camera, this is just to give you an idea that I'm flying this right at 400 feet. I'm standing right there, if you can see that. But this is what I was talking about earlier about surveying other properties. We had deer running through this. Again, this is my church, nice big property. We had deer running around. I wanted to see where they were coming from, where they're going to. And I just surveyed around just to get an idea. And you could see how this would work for just animal surveys. And maybe you're at a food plant and you can't get to the adjacent property. Well, you can stay within your airspace, get high enough, and then look and see maybe what's going on. There may be some conducive conditions over over this way that you really couldn't see. But that helps out a great deal. So that I'll just go through this real quick. See if I can get anything more. Yeah, there isn't much to this. This is just aerial. But you can see how clear the camera is and how far you can see, which is really nice. I'll run this up to the very end. Something that these drones do, if I have this on here, that, okay. There. Yeah, I wanted to get a shot of that pond. So we're good there. This is really wanted, before I play this is the church in near a fairly large city. They wanted some bird work done or some surveying done. You can see how to get a lift in here. This is a very high church too. The steeple and the parapet and everything's pretty high. You'd have to block off the street to get a lift in here because this really isn't very big, and there are trees everywhere all along these sidewalks. But we didn't need a lift, at least initially. This is what we can do with a drone. You can see how close I am to the building. And we're just moving upwards. You can see there are some spikes. There was some prior bird work done here, some exclusion. The reason we were called in to look at this, they had a bird issue and a bat issue. And you'll see in a minute what we found. You can see how high we're getting and how still those pictures are. And the clients were thrilled that they had this video out for us. So you can see the spikes. And this shows you how close the property is. You could get a lift in here, but We saved a lot of time doing this inspection. This would have taken probably hours with a lift, and I was around this entire building within 2 hours. So I'll keep playing that. And you can see some of the work that needs to be done. If I can zoom this in here a little bit. This is the bell tower. Oh, man, it's just a little bit. This is what I thought was really interesting. You can see how these spikes have heaved, and they're not really effective anymore. And right along here, you can see where the slate. This is an old slate roof, and you can see gaps and things like that all along here, up under the gutter, and flashing and everything. Bats were flying in and out of there at will. But you can see what that does. And this is another good shot. I'll back that up just a little bit. Right up under here was a bat excess, that whole area. We did bat surveys in the evening and found them flying out of there. You can see some of the rub marks and all of that. Something else too that would be hard to see, this chimney right here, this vent, no cap on it. Pretty easy to see with the drone. And up underneath, again, all that's exclusion work that needs to be done. But that really gives that paints a very good, pictures are worth 1,000 words, and videos even more so. Showing a client this is a great sales tool. They can see exactly what's going on. And it also gives us an idea of what we need to do as well. If this goes, this is just the surrounding neighborhood a little bit. See if I can get this right down to the very end. One thing I like about my own drone is that I can punch a button called land. It'll fly right to me and hover at head level, and I just grab it. And that's it. So that is, pardon the pun, a 50,000-foot flyover of a drone and its potential for pest management. Down the road, I can see these things becoming more and more part of what we do. It makes things a little bit safer, gives us better detail for inspections, great tools to use. And cost-wise, initially, they're fairly expensive. My own drone, with everything, was a couple $1,000s to do, but that wasn't too bad. Drones are all over the map in prices. I've seen there's a beautiful drone out there I just looked at. Unfortunately, I'll never own it because it was about $15,000, but that can do just about anything you want it to do. But search around, shop around, talk with vendors, talk with folks that have drones. And again, I will be at the conference. So if you want to find me, we can talk about this stuff. I love doing this kind of work. And I think even maybe when I get a little older and retire, this may be a consulting job. I don't know. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you for putting up with my voice such as it is. And that should do it. So I will stop sharing this now.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Dale again. I am recording an addendum to our talk that you just listened to. First of all, I want to apologize. We did this recording for the first time in November, and I was almost without a voice, but I'm feeling much better now because it's February, spring is in the air, and we are ready to go. But what I wanted to talk about was some addendums and changes for drone use in 2024. The phone app that we talked about before for the drones was Before You Fly. That is all changed now. It's now called AirAware, and it's easier. It's an application that's available out in the wherever you get your apps from. It's easier to use, better detail. It gives immediate restrictions for NOTAMs and LAANCs, which we will talk about here in just a second. The AirAware app, it's again, it's easier to use. The NOTAM is Notice to All Airmen. What that is actually a notification out to pilots around airports that will describe any restrictions or any events that pilots may have to avoid, such as if the president were somewhere close by, the airspace is completely restricted. Any pilot, private or commercial, would get a NOTAM saying that that's the case. They would have to avoid the area. And the LANC is the low altitude authorization and notification capability. That is for some possible waivers that we might encounter, and I'll talk about a couple of those in just a second. The picture on my screen on the right is actually what the app looks like, and I just pulled this up on my phone, and that where the map cursor is my house. Now this area, there's an area to the left that we'll talk about in a second, and it's a good example of why you need to know this information. Right now, this says the air is clear. It's okay to fly at my house, but 1 mile west of me is the Ohio Western Reserve National Cemetery. That is under the National Park System, and they are also under Department of Defense and Veterans Affairs. That is restricted airspace. We can't readily fly a drone there. We can fly around it, like the picture on the right shows, but the actual pictures inside, we would have to get permission to fly that first. That would be done by contacting Veterans Affairs, which might be a little different than what someone would be used to. Now, if there's an airport close by and we have restricted airspace there, there's an app. The app on the phone will say apply for LANC. You just fill that out very quickly, and it's all done over the phone now. It used to be a form that had to be filled out, and that would have to that would take weeks. Now it's a matter of seconds. So that is a big improvement for this year. Amateurs in trouble. Another reason why I wanted to talk about this is a scenario that actually happened to me, but I was not the amateur in trouble. There's another part of drone flying that we can't fly over, basically because of governmental restrictions. It's critical infrastructure like bridges, railroads, that kind of thing. Somebody was flying an amateur drone over a railroad yard, and the railroad people saw that and contacted the local law enforcement. The local law enforcement happened to be my sister, who is a police officer, and she contacted me to find out how they could find out who flew the drone. Well, at that time, we couldn't fly the drone. We couldn't have the transponders were not in place, and they were unable to trace the drone. That's no longer the case. As you recall back from the last talk in September, we were required on anybody that has a drone, commercial or private, has to have a transponder either on board or in the software that will allow the FAA to track and see where we're flying and how we're flying. But that's all the case now. So this whole scenario would be avoided if this situation were to happen again. Law enforcement could contact the FAA. They would be able to pull up a trace and find out any aircraft in the area, which is including a drone. They can tell exactly what's going on, and so you have to be very careful where we're flying. Another addendum is flying at night. Before, we really weren't allowed to fly at night too much without a special waiver. That waiver has been softened a little bit. We can fly at night as long as drones have visible strobe lights on them that can be seen for about 3 miles. That seems like a lot, but there are drones now that are maybe 1 inch by 1 inch. The strobe lights are very, very bright, and they're easily seen from that far away. And if you're doing videography at night, lesser lights are allowed to be used for that videography, especially if you're around a building doing an inspection. Some drones, you have to remember, some drones are capable night flyers, others are not. That depends on the software and the camera package you have of the drone. Some drones have infrared and starlight cameras. They're very sophisticated. They can take infrared, body heat, law enforcement or first responders use those for rescue operations. Those can be used. Some of the other cameras cannot be. My personal drone that I use for work is a day flyer. It has sophisticated cameras on it, but it uses the cameras as part of the GPS system, so you cannot really fly that one at night. If I needed to fly at night, I would have to fly a different drone. There are new models, changes within the industry. DJI, who is the world's largest drone manufacturer, they have basically 70% of the drone market on Earth. They were running into some problems because it's a Chinese-based company, and there were some issues a while back about potentially the Chinese government hacking into that software and getting information from us. That has been fixed by DJI a little bit, meaning this they do have software out there that's hack proof, that they can't be the software can't be pirated or information can be gleaned from that. But I would suggest, if you do have contracts where you need to be DoD, which is Department of Defense compliant, there are a list of DoD approved drones out there that will allow you to do operations. Others cannot be. Again, with my own drone, Skydio has discontinued their consumer drone market, which is the 2 and the 2 Plus. I have the 2 with 2 Plus software on it, but they are still supporting my software, so I'm able to fly the drone, and I will be able to fly the drone for quite a few years yet. I just contacted them, and they upgraded my software package, so we should be all set to go there. And something too, there's a lesson learned. Again, this is another personal experience. Make sure if you're using a phone, phones and tablets can be used to fly drones now, but make sure the phone and tablet used with the drone itself or paired with a hand controller is compatible with the drone software. I switched phones because we had Galaxies and we switched to another brand of phone. That particular phone would not interact with my drone controller. So I had to go out and buy a tablet that was to hook that into my controller to be allowed to use the drone. So if you're going to do that kind of thing, save yourself a lot of aggravation. Let you contact the manufacturer of your drone to find out what phones or tablets are compatible and which ones are not. And of course, this doesn't apply if some of the controllers now have built-in screens, and that just eliminates the problem entirely. And some helpful links for the FAA drone zone. That is really basically where you start. If you remember back for the rest of the talk, the drones have to be registered. Drones have to be, you have to have a Part 107 license to fly commercially. All that information is in there, and you can get both those links will definitely get you started and get you going. And I also would suggest when you start doing this, if you're very serious about it and you want your license, there are classes out there commercially that are available online. I took one myself. It was very helpful. There's a lot of things on there that a lot of folks don't know about flying, that you need to know to pass the exam. I would look into several of those classes, find one that you think you might like, and take that class before you take the F-107 exam, because it's pretty lengthy and it can be a little complicated at times. So I think that should do it for me for right now. Hopefully this will work. And if anybody has any questions, please let me know. This picture is one of my other little hobbies is high power rocketry. So I do that as well as fly drones. But it's been a pleasure. Thank you very much.